Hey guys, tonight we're peeling back the velvet curtain of history, and what's behind it is colder, darker, and smells faintly of boiled cabbage. The wind outside carries a damp chill, the kind that slips through the cracks of wooden walls and settles in your bones. And you won't be walking through castles or ballrooms. You'll be waking up in medieval Europe, where the pottage is thin, the fleas are loyal, and the nights never quite end. If this quiet, grim humor speaks to your weary soul, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely into it. And tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. There's something oddly comforting about falling asleep to the same misery, together. Now, let's set the mood. Dim the lights. Turn on a fan for that soft, mechanical hum. Let the room go still. No need to rush in. Now you are slipping backward slowly. 700 years. Into wool and wood smoke. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1325. The good news? You're alive. The bad news? So are the fleas. Chapter 1. A day in medieval Europe, 1325. You wake up to the smell of wet wool and something that might be goat. The blanket clings to you, heavy with last winter's sweat and the kind of grime that only comes from sharing a bed with 4 humans, 2 chickens, and at least 1 rat you're on nodding terms with. There's no sunlight, not really. Just a watery greyness leaking through the cracks in the wall, as if even the day is unsure it wants to be here. You stretch. A mistake. Your spine cracks like old wood. Your knees groan in protest, and your hip makes a noise that can only be described as medieval. You're 22. That's considered mature. Not quite elderly, but definitely pre-crumbling. Your mattress is straw stuffed in a sack that hasn't been replaced since the last plague. It smells like earth, sweat, and a faint note of panic. The lice have been busy in the night. You scratch idly at your scalp, and something under your fingernail wriggles. It's best not to investigate. Beside you, someone snores. Hard to tell if it's your brother, your grandmother, or the family pig. All of you sleep in one room. Not because you like each other, but because it's the only room. There are no doors, no curtains, just the vague idea of personal space and the solid reality of shared breath. Everything smells alive. Not in the fresh, flowery way. In the damp, fungal, something is fermenting under that bench way. The floor is a patchwork of dirt, spilled beer, and unconfirmed substances. You slide your feet into it like a brave soldier entering battle. Aren't medieval concepts. You rise because work won't wait, and the chickens are already judging you. But first, nature calls. You step outside into the biting cold. Nature answers back. There's no bathroom, not even a charming little outhouse with a moon carved in the door. Just a wooden bucket. Behind the house. Maybe. If you're lucky. If you're not lucky, and today you're not, it's already full. Uncle Wulfric had a rough night again. You try not to look. Or breathe. You do your business as quickly as shame allows. And then, with a solemn little prayer, you toss it into the street. Yes, the street. Because that's where it goes. That's where everything goes. You're supposed to shout something like, "Gardy Lou," before you dump it. You don't. No one does. That's half the fun. The street is a slurry of rainwater, pig droppings, human waste, and a mysterious soup of medieval liquids best not analysed. You walk through it later to get to church, in your only pair of shoes, if you have shoes. And if you're lucky enough to live near a public latrine, well, that's where people gather to relieve themselves shoulder to shoulder, on a long wooden bench with no dividers and no dignity. You might make small talk. You might make eye contact. You'll definitely regret both. Now, you wipe your hands on something that might have once been a tunic, Exhale into the grey air and step into the day. Not because you're ready, but because it's already waiting. The midday misery, work, rules, and random suffering. The world outside greets you with a grunt. Not a warm one, just a grunt. From a neighbour already knee-deep in mud, poking at an uncooperative goat. You nod back. That's morning pleasantries done. Your job today? It depends. Maybe it's gathering firewood. Maybe it's hauling dung. Maybe it's digging a ditch someone else will fill in tomorrow. Labour isn't scheduled, it's constant. Your hands are already calloused, your back sore, and you haven't even lifted anything yet. Children trail behind you barefoot, herding geese with sticks. One of them is 7 and already missing 2 teeth. Not from fighting, just from being alive. You pass the manor. You don't look up. That's their world, the landowners. Yours is the one that smells like sweat and disappointment. If you're a serf, your labour is owed. If you're free, it still doesn't mean much. Either way, you work and bow when told. There's a man shouting in the square. A proclamation maybe, or a punishment. Someone stole bread, or cursed a priest, or just looked the wrong way at someone with a feather in their hat. Justice is quick and often wrong. You keep walking. A toothache pulses behind your eye. Wobbly Thomas is acting up again. You briefly consider seeing the barber today. Maybe get your blood. Yours are unbalanced. Lunch is a distant concept. Maybe a crust of rye. Maybe a stolen apple. You chew on hope and call it a meal. A cloud of smoke curls from the church chimney. Inside, the priest is preparing for mass or punishment. Religion is not comfort here. It's obligation and fear, and the chance to confess sins you didn't know were sins until someone richer told you they were. Someone coughs nearby, wet, deep and rattling. No one says anything. Plague, flu, bad air, who can tell? You just turn your face and keep walking. That's how most things work in 1325. You endure, you obey, you rot, slowly. The sun hasn't even hit its peak yet, and just like that, without warning or welcome, the light begins to shift. Not toward rest, but toward the next round of exhaustion. Dusk and dread, the quiet fall of the day. The light begins to dim, but no one speaks of evening. Time is not measured in hours, but in chores left undone. You're still working. Everyone is. Even the old ones who shouldn't be. Even the children who shouldn't yet. Your feet are soaked. Not from rain, but from the ground itself. Always damp, always wanting to swallow something. A cart rolls past with one broken wheel, creaking like an old man's knees. On it lies a bundle that might be firewood, might be someone's uncle. You don't ask. There's no dinner bell, just the slow gathering of people back toward the single-room homes that breathe warmth and mildew. The fires are low. Wood is scarce. Most heat comes from bodies and the thick, low hush of exhaustion. Your evening meal is almost identical to breakfast. Another bowl of pottage, this one thinner. Your teeth complain again. Wobbly Thomas has made it clear. He's quitting soon. You chew on one side, sip lukewarm ale, and listen. To coughing. to rain, to chickens settling in for the night. A child cries. A dog barks. Somewhere, a priest chants a Latin no one understands. You sit close to the hearth, if there is one. If not, you sit close to someone warm. No one talks much. Talking wastes breath, and stories are for people with extra time. You do not have extra time. You lie aches, the same quiet surrender. You sleep, the fleas do not. Chapter 2. Catherine the Great, becoming the Empress. You learn to sit still. Stillness is survival. In a court where everyone whispers and no one forgets, movement draws attention, and attention is dangerous. Peter plays with toy soldiers until midnight. You read military theory. He stages parades for his dogs. You memorize the names of nobles whose loyalties sway like candlelight in the drafty halls of the palace. You bleed, in secret, alone. There is no comfort here, only expectation. The Empress wants an heir. Your husband is uninterested. You do what royal women always do in such cases. You smile. You scheme. You solve the problem, discreetly. The child is born, a boy. Everyone exhales. No one says much. Everyone suspects everything. The Empress grows weaker. Peter grows bolder. He mocks the church, insults the guards, plays king in private. You watch. You wait. And when Elizabeth dies, and the crown finally falls, it falls onto Peter's head like a joke told too long. The room does not applaud. It merely holds its breath. Peter is Tsar. For now. But so are you. Quietly. With every letter you write, every alliance you nurture, every guard who now answers to you first, not him. The coup doesn't come with a scream. It comes like a whisper, one you've been rehearsing for years. But stillness can only last so long. Eventually, even silence sharpens into a blade. The crown, the coup, and the cold room. It happens faster than anyone expected. Peter is Tsar for just 6 months. 6 months of insults, paranoia, and poor decisions. 6 months of alienating the nobles, mocking the church, and threatening the very guards who once saluted him. And while he plays emperor with his Prussian uniforms and beer-soaked policies, you build something quieter, something stronger. You build trust among the officers, among the clergy, among the ones who actually hold power when titles fail. One morning you ride out in full military dress. You do not hide in the shadows. You do not whisper. You speak. And when you speak, the soldiers kneel. They do not kneel for Peter. He flees to a palace far from Moscow, far from help. He pens a letter of abdication. He is promised safety. He dies 8 days later. No one investigates too hard. You do not ask. You do not flinch. You move into the winter palace the way smoke fills a cold room. Slowly, thoroughly, and without apology. There is no coronation feast, no wild cheers, just candlelight, and a woman standing at the heart of a vast empire that does not yet love her. But great, not because the world called you that, but because you wrote the title yourself, in ink, blood, and absolute certainty. History watches. But now it turns its gaze to another woman, another crown, and a very different kind of fire. Chapter 3. The Red Queen. Now, imagine you are the daughter of a queen who lost her crown, and a king who lost interest. Born Mary, not yet bloody, just a quiet girl in the wrong religion at the wrong time, in a palace that no longer calls your name. Your mother is exiled. Your titles are stripped. You are forced to serve the children of the woman who replaced her. You curtsy to your father with trembling lips and dry eyes. You learn how to vanish without leaving the room. You do not fight back. Not yet. You survive. They call you sickly. They call you stubborn. They call you childless, cursed, cold. But they forget you are also a Tudor. And Tudors do not vanish. When your brother dies, the boy king with big ideas and weak lungs, the crown shifts wildly. They try to give it to someone else. Jane, sweet Jane, a puppet queen for 13 days. But you gather riders, you march. You let the people see you, cloaked in red and lit by firelight. And they choose you. You don't steal the throne, you return to it. With silence. With steel. And with the memory of your mother burning quietly behind your eyes. You are queen now, but the crown you win through fire does not warm you. But the throne is cold. The robes are heavy, and the crown fits like a warning. You try to rule with the memory of your mother, her dignity, her devotion, her endless prayers. But the court does not want a mother. They want a monarch, and they want her Protestant. You light candles in every chapel. You walk barefoot in penance. You whisper Latin into empty cathedrals, and hope God is still listening. But prayers are not policies, and guilt is not governance. So you act. The heretics do not recant. They preach in alleyways and print in basements. They spit your name as if it's ash in their mouths. You burn them, not out of cruelty, but out of certainty. Not because you are evil, but because you are afraid of hell, of failure, of dying without an heir, and leaving England to the very people who erased your mother's face from every painting in the palace. The fires rise. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes hundreds, and you become something else. Not Mary the faithful, not Mary the just, but Bloody Mary. A name spoken by candlelight, by children, by ghosts. Still, you wait for a child. You swear you feel it kick, but there is no heartbeat, only swelling and silence. Chapter 4. The Virgin Queen. You grew up in the shadow of your mother's execution. Anne Boleyn, the second wife, the scandal, the warning. You were barely 3 when the sword fell. Not the axe, the French sword. Quicker, cleaner, still final. Your father remarried. Then again. You learned how to smile without believing, how to curtsy without bending, how to listen without speaking. You studied Latin by candlelight, Greek by sunrise, and politics in the silence between weddings and funerals. They did not expect you to rule, but you watched. You always watched. When your sister dies, pale, childless, and broken by faith, the crown is passed to you, lightly, fearfully. You are 25, unmarried, unbending. The council urges you to take a husband. You smile. You do not say yes. You do not say no. You say nothing. For years, you become a symbol, and then you become a strategy. Your body is a battlefield they'll never conquer. Your throne is not shared. Your name becomes a weapon, carved in gold and whispered in war rooms. You defeat the Spanish Armada, not by sword, but by storms, luck, and the fact that your enemies never truly understood how dangerous silence could be. You wear white lead on your face, red on your lips, a mask made of monarchy and myth. No one sees you age. No one dares ask. You are married to England, the only union that ever mattered. You sleep alone, but you are never lonely. You buried everyone, your mother, your father, your sister, your lovers, even your own legend, while it was still being written. And when you die, there is no heir. Only legacy, not a crown passed down, but an empire no one thought you'd build. You never married. You never gave them an heir. You never gave them what they asked for. And still, they called you Gloriana. Still, they wrote poems in your name. Still, they wept when your mask finally cracked. You left no children. Only an England that stood taller than when you found it. And for a Tudor, that was enough. Power wears many faces. Sometimes it sits on a throne. Sometimes it walks into battle with nothing but a banner and a prayer. Chapter 5. Joan of Arc, the girl who heard God. The voices began when you were 13. Not whispers, not dreams. Voices. Clear, commanding, holy. They told you to say France. You believed them, because you were a farmer's daughter, no crown, no sword, no schooling. But somehow none of that mattered. You cut your hair, you wore armor, you rode to war on a horse that didn't know your name, surrounded by men who didn't believe you, until you won. You were 16. You stand in front of the Dauphin of France. Mud on your boots, steel on your chest, faith glowing in your eyes like something radioactive. They laugh at you. A girl in a man's world, a peasant in a court of silk, a prophet in a time of politics. But you do not flinch, you do not blink. You speak calmly, like someone who's already seen how this ends, and somehow he believes you. You were given a sword, a banner, an army. They follow, not because they trust you, but because something about you burns a little brighter than fear. You ride into Orléans. The walls are crumbling. The English hold the city like a noose. You break it, with no military training, no noble blood, no explanation other than, God told me to. And suddenly, the girl they mocked becomes the miracle they pray beside. But miracles, like girls, are easier to praise than to protect. Victory does not protect you, not from doubt, not from politics, not from men who smile while sharpening knives. You've lifted the siege. You've marched with kings. You've crowned the Dauphin in Rheims Cathedral, as the voices said you would, but now they question you. They ask where the voices come from, why God would speak to a girl in armor, but not to bishops in silk. You were captured, sold, put on trial, not for heresy, but for being impossible. They strip you of your armor, of your name, of your story. They try to make you say you lied, that you were confused, that the voices were just wind in the trees. You say no. They offer mercy, if you will only stop being the miracle they didn't authorize. You say no, and so they tie you to a stake, in the marketplace, at 19, while the church bells ring like mockery overhead. You do not scream. The fire takes your voice. The smoke takes your shape, but your name stays, long after the bones have cooled. You were not a queen. You were not a soldier. You were not even 20, and yet they still remember your name. Not because you were chosen, but because you believed you were. That was the real heresy. Not the voices, not the armor, but the audacity to think a girl could change history. You burned, but you did not disappear. Some rise in flames, others in silence. Chapter 6. Rasputin, the man who wouldn't die. Russia, winter, the twilight of an empire. You arrive, barefoot, bearded, and strange. A peasant court is sick. Not just the boy with the bleeding disease, but the whole palace, drowning in opulence and fear. And somehow, you walk through its doors like you belong there. They say you can heal. You don't argue. You simply look at the child, place your hand on his chest, and the bleeding stops. You speak softly, always softly, Even when the room is filled with generals, dukes, bishops, men with titles and medals, and nothing left to believe in. But they listen, because when you speak, the sick breathe easier, the anxious sleep deeper. And the Tsarina, Alexandra, looks at you as if you are the only man left alive in a world crumbling by candlelight. You do not raise armies, you raise eyebrows. You do not write laws, you write letters soaked in mysticism and misspelled blessings. And still, they come to you. For healing, for prophecy, for absolution. You move through the palace like smoke, through whispers, through rumors, through silk-curtained rooms where men speak of revolution with trembling hands and vodka-stained lips. They call you a holy man, a madman, a devil wrapped in fur. But you smile, because you know what they don't. Power does not need a throne, it only needs access, and you have the keys. But the keys you hold begin to rattle. Too many doors, too many secrets, too many nights where your shadow falls longer than any noble's name. They say you whisper in the Tsarina's ear, that you choose appointments, that you rewrite orders before the ink is dry. They fear what they don't understand. And you've made a career of being incomprehensible. So they decide. You have to go. They invite you to dinner. Not in the palace, in a basement. Warm wine, cold smiles, cakes laced with cyanide. You eat, you laugh, you ask for more. You are supposed to collapse. You don't. They shoot you in the chest. You fall, they drink, but when they check your pulse, you open your eyes. You get up, they panic, they shoot again. You run, bleeding, staggering, furious. Through the snow, through the courtyard, through the edge of myth, they shoot you a third time, in the head. And even then, they bind you, wrap your hands, drop you in a frozen river. Just in case, when they pull your body from the water days later, your lungs hold ice, but your eyes are still open. And for years after, children in Russia sleep with candles burning, because they've heard stories about a man who wouldn't die, because death didn't scare him the way he scared everyone else. Chapter 7. Marie Antoinette, the crown of sugar. You are 14, a gift, wrapped in silk, sent across Europe like a love letter no one signed. You arrive in France with powdered cheeks and wide eyes. You do not speak the language. You do not know the rules. But they place a crown in your lap anyway. You marry a boy who barely looks at you. You smile. You wait. You learn how to laugh at the right time and cry in private. They call you Dauphine, then Queen, then something less kind. You build your world out of sugar and distraction. At Versailles, the walls do not listen. They echo. Laughter, perfume, shoes, more shoes, endless silk. You host masked balls while the breadlines grow. You name sheep after ministers. You play shepherdess in a garden built to look like poverty. And still, you are lonely. You are always lonely. They call you extravagant, they call you heartless, they call you foreign. As if you chose any of this. As if a girl of 14 could rewrite a nation's debt with embroidery. You are no villain. But history prefers its women either adored or condemned. You are too soft to be feared, too visible to be spared. So they turn on you. But the silk cannot hold, not against hunger, not against rage, not against the sound of 10,000 footsteps echoing through the gardens of Versailles, not in heels, but in bare feet, hardened by years without bread. The fountains still run, the roses still bloom, but the walls are thinner than they look. You smile at the court, still, hold your teacup with perfect grace. You hear the shouts beyond the gates and pretend they're wind. But wind doesn't chant your name. Not like that. They say you're the reason their children starve, that your gowns weigh more than their farms, that your perfume costs more than a year's worth of bread. They do not care that you didn't choose this life. You wore it. And now, you must wear what comes next. The palace doors are kicked in, not broken, just opened. Too many hands, too many years of being shut out. You leave Versailles with mud on your shoes, and the sound of silk tearing behind you. Paris is colder than you remember. The windows have no lace. The stairs have no warmth. You walk through the streets not as queen, but as debt made flesh. They separate you from Louis, then from your son, then from your name. Your body becomes public. Your grief becomes entertainment. And every morning, the bells ring not for mass, but for another head. When they come for you, you don't begin something else. You were never the villain they needed, just the mirror. You didn't say, let them eat cake. You whispered, am I still beautiful? And they answered with fire. History does not care for softness. Not in women, not in queens. It carves your name in headlines, not truth. But even now, somewhere in a forgotten garden, roses still bloom for the girl who only wanted to dance. Chapter 8. The Art and the Ache. You return to life in pieces. A back brace, a limp, the body stitched in places no one dares name. But your voice? Still whole, still sharp. You fall in love with a man who paints walls like they're battlefields. Diego, larger than life, and somehow smaller than your silence. He loves your fire and steps on it often. But you stay, because love too is a kind of revolution. Mexico holds you like memory, loud, chaotic, full of color that bleeds outside the lines. You wear flowers like armor, corsets like cages, jewelry like warning signs. Your house becomes a museum before you're even gone. A blue house with red floors and echoes of pain in every window. You paint what others fear, your miscarriage, your spine, your face, again and again, cracking, blooming, splitting open like fruit. Your self-portraits are not vanity, they're proof. You were here. You endured. You made it beautiful. You outlived Diego, your fame, even your legs. But you die with your brush near your bed and a fire in your chest they never managed to put out. Chapter 9. The Ghost in the Glass. You are not painted. You are photographed. Captured not in oil or marble, but in silver nitrate and silence. You sit still, not because you want to, but because the shutter demands it. The dress is tight, the corset tighter. Your waist disappears under pressure, but your presence does not. They say you are beautiful, then they say you are too beautiful. Then they say you are nothing but beauty, a surface, a shadow. But you know better. You've read the scripts, memorized the angles, understood how the light falls when men want to fall in love with an image, not a woman. You give them the image, but you keep the woman. Hollywood glows like champagne, and stings like it too. You were told to smile, so you smile. You were told to bleach your hair, so you bleach. You were told to be soft, sexy, slow. So you move like syrup poured over glass. Inside, you were breaking, But there's no audience for that. So you pose, so you perform, so you become a myth before you even become a memory. They call you a star, but stars burn. Quietly, violently, alone. You are passed from studio to studio, director to director, headline to headline, until even your name feels like someone else's. You marry, then again, then again. You are searched for in men's arms and found only in the quiet after they leave. Your medicine cabinet becomes crowded, your bed less so, but the camera still loves you, and that is both a blessing and a sentence, because when you speak, they cut the sound. When you cry, they fix the lighting, and when you collapse, they frame it. You die young, alone, surrounded not by friends, but flashbulbs and unanswered calls. And still, they sell your smile, your dresses, your name. They call you tragic, as if that's the whole story. But the truth is, you were real. More real than the men who directed you, who dressed you, who declared you difficult the moment you asked to be seen. You were never just a blonde. You were a mirror. And the world flinched when it saw itself too clearly. You were Marilyn, but before that, Norma. And somewhere between the stage name and the sleeping pills, a girl just wanted to go home. You don't haunt the screen. You haunt the silence after it fades to black. You were not a ghost, but you lived like one. Seen, worshipped, never held. And maybe that's all fame ever is. A spotlight bright enough to erase the girl and leave only the glow. But still, in quiet rooms, on sleepless night. Chapter 10. The body remains. You do not begin with memory. You begin with blood. A faint pulse, a gasp. The body waking up not in beauty, but in ache. Not the kind of ache that fades with time, but the kind that folds itself into your spine, makes a home there. You are not a saint. You are not a martyr. You are not even someone most people will name. You are just a body, a servant scrubbing stone floors in Vienna, a child coughing in a factory in Manchester, a mother binding her stomach in corsets laced by other hands. And yet, history moves because you do. You are the hands that kneaded bread while revolution stirred. You are the feet that walked miles for water, so that your name could vanish while someone else's was carved in marble. You are the coal-streaked cheeks in a black and white photograph, the eyes that watched sons leave for war and never come back the same, the lungs that burned in mines, or in riots, or in the quiet suffocation of never being seen. No crown, no scripture, just calluses and silence. You are the seamstress who pricked her fingers, stitching the flag that others would die under. You are the nurse who held a trembling hand as the bombs fell 2 streets away. You are the factory girl, making bullets that might end lives, but might also end the war. History forgets you, but not entirely. You remain. In the curve of a staircase smoothed by 1,000 tired hands, in the lace passed down through 6 generations, in a recipe with no name, but still made the same way every Sunday. You are not the one who wrote the law, but you were the one it punished. You are not the one who drew the maps, but you were the one they moved across borders like livestock. You didn't speak at the trials, but you were the reason the witnesses wept. You are the echo, the aftermath, the uncredited architect of survival. Your life was not epic, but it was real, and it left marks. Stretch marks, scars, a bruise that bloomed for days. You had dreams, but no time. You had poems, but no paper. You had fire, but it was needed for cooking, not burning the world down. And still, you endured. You endured through empires rising and falling, through plagues and policies, through cold winters and colder beds. You sang lullabies no one recorded. You lit candles no one photographed. You wept, were beheaded. The saints burned. But you folded the sheets the next day. You made soup. You went on. Your name may not be in the books, but it's in the bones of everything. Because the body remains, even when history forgets, even when memory fails, even when the flame is out and the ink is dry, still you remain. And in the stillness that follows, someone else begins to stir. Someone who heard your footsteps, your breath, your ache. And they rise because you once did. And yet, the ashes of that fire didn't just fall on books or bodies. They settled in the lungs of revolution, in whispers, in manifestos, in bullets tucked into pockets. Because the question wasn't just what power could destroy, it was what would rise to replace it. And for that, we crossed the ocean. To the factories, to the sweat, to the hunger that doesn't just ache, but organizes. Chapter 11. Workers rise. It starts with coughing, not the gentle kind, the kind that rattles through ribs, like something trying to break free. You are 10. Your hands are small enough to reach into machines most men fear. You don't go to school. You go to the mill. The factory smells like grease, ash, and the quiet panic of people pretending not to be afraid. The air is thick with lint. Your lungs feel heavier by the hour. You've never seen a clear sky. Not really. Just smoke and steam and the ghost of sunlight trapped behind soot-stained glass. There's no silence. Not here. Only the scream of metal, the snap of belts, the grinding rhythm of something too big to understand. You learn the music of the machine before you learn your own name. Your mother works 3 floors above you. Your father disappeared after the last wage cut. They say he joined the union. They say he's dead. You don't ask. You've learned not to ask. You earn 5 pence a week. Your fingers bleed. You bandage them with thread. There is no time to rest, because rest is for the rich. The overseer walks by. You do not make eye contact. His cane taps the floor like a metronome. Behind him, silence falls. Not respect, just calculation. How many minutes until he leaves? How many seconds can you steal for breath? The girl beside you, her name is Clara, loses a finger. The machine doesn't care. The floor drinks the blood. The manager shouts for someone to take her place. You do not look. You do not stop. You do not cry. You are 10, and you are already replaceable. Outside, the smoke spills into every brick, into every lung, into every newborn's first breath. The streets aren't paved in gold. They're paved in ash and promises. You walk them in shoes too small and hope too old. You pass the baker's window. The bread is white. The price is red. You count your coins. You count again. You walk away. At night, your mother rubs oil into her hands. Her knuckles crack like coal under pressure. She used to sing. Now she just exhales. Like music costs too much to carry. You sleep 5 to a bed. You wake up with someone else's cough. You dream in grey. But something is changing. Not loudly, not all at once. But in the space between each breath, you hear it. In the way the old men speak over soup. In the way the girls linger after work. in the way the preacher suddenly talks less about heaven and more about rent. They call it solidarity. You don't know what that means yet, but you know what it feels like. Warmth, like standing next to someone who knows your pain and refuses to look away. Then one morning, the machines don't start. The overseers shout. The belts stay still. One man says no, then another, then 100. They spill into the street like something cracked open, like a scene that's been waiting years to blood. 10 hours or nothing. You march with them, not because you understand the politics, but because your body remembers the ache, and your soul recognizes the rhythm of resistance. The factory gates close, but the voices rise. The police come with batons. The owners come with promises. The newspapers come with lies. They call you agitators, ungrateful, dirty. But you know the truth. You built the city. You made the machines run. You turned coal into power. And now, you're done begging to breathe. The strikes spread, from city to city, from loom to furnace, from whisper to thunder. Women lead marches. Children hold signs. Old men pass down songs older than sorrow. The bosses try to wait you out, but winter waits with you. Fires are lit, bread is shared, and every shared meal is a revolution. They send in the army. You do not flinch. They send in scabs. You hold the line. They send in fear, and still, you sing, low, rough, tired, but loud enough to drown out the machine. Months pass. Some go hungry. Some go missing. Some go to prison. But the silence never returns. You win some rights. You lose some battles. But the spell has broken. No longer do you believe that poverty is your fault, or that suffering is noble, or that obedience is holy. You are not machinery. You are not background. You are not expendable. You are the ones who carry the world, brick by brick, stitch by stitch, breath by breath. And the world is starting to notice. Unions form, child labor laws pass, minimum wages appear, not everywhere, not perfectly, but enough to show that even the smallest voice, when echoed by thousands, can become law. You go back to the mill, eventually, but your shoulders are straighter. Your voice is louder. Your eyes meet the overseer's. He flinches. Not because you are dangerous, yet, but because now you believe you might be. History will not write you as neatly as it does kings. But if someone listens closely, they'll hear you. In every fire escape, every union card, every paid break, every weekend, every time someone says, "I deserve better," that's you, still marching, still coughing, still singing through the smoke. Because the machine never stopped, but neither did you. Though the chants of bread, work, and dignity still echo through the streets, and the smoke, the sorrow, and the spark of belief cling to every corner, history, as always, does not pause. It shifts. It waits. Because after the crowds disperse and the banners come down, a different question begins to rise. Not shouted in the squares, but whispered behind closed doors. Who really gets to tell the story? Chapter 12. History. You walk through it slowly. The museum. Not the grand kind, where marbled columns and Latin inscriptions loom like judgment. This one is smaller, quiet, dusty in the corners. The kind with flickering lights, laminated captions, and the soft smell of aging paper and air-conditioned regret. Your footsteps echo, even on the carpet. There's a weight to the silence here. The kind that only rooms filled with ghosts can offer. Each glass case holds a story. Each label tells a lie. Some are obvious, some are elegant. Some are so convincing that even the lie has forgotten it's not the truth anymore. Here is a sword, labeled Crusader's Blade, 12th century, but the blade is too clean. The hilt never saw blood. It was crafted in 1875 by a man named Edgar for his private collection. He once dressed his dog in chainmail for parties. No one mentions that here. Here is a dress. Marie Antoinette's ball gown, 1785. Never worn by her. Not even made in France. But the silk is real. The lace is old. And tourists love it. You pass a wax figure labelled Joan of Arc at the stake. She looks calm, almost peaceful, as if she's posing for a Renaissance oil painting. She didn't look like that. She screamed. She prayed. She burned. The mannequins don't smell like smoke. The plaques don't mention what she said when they shaved her head, or how long her heartbeat lasted after the fire started. History in here has been softened, washed, curated for easy swallowing, because history, real history, is too loud for rooms like this. It doesn't stay behind glass. It bleeds. It breaks things. It shows up with its teeth bared and its hands full of questions no one wants to answer. You stand before a painting. Queen Elizabeth I, 1588. White face paint, red lips, eyes like polished amber. She looks invincible, immortal, but that paint hid scars. That smile held grief. She outlived everyone. She died alone. The caption says nothing about that. In the next room, there are medals. War medals. Each one displayed like a prize. Each one meant someone bled. Someone wept. Someone never came home. There's a small bronze plaque that reads, "For valor." Not, "For leaving your brother to die in a trench because the captain said move." Not, "For watching your friend forget how to sleep." Not, "For standing in a war that wasn't really yours." You find a hallway labelled Women in History. It's short. There's a corset, a typewriter, a photograph of who bled to make those borders. No mention of the children lost to empire. No mention of the voices that were silenced, so a few men could write their names on oceans. Discovery, in this room, is a polished telescope and a brave face, not a scream. Not a chain, not a stolen god. At the end of the museum, there's a guest book. People write things like, "So educational," "Fascinating history," "So glad we came." You stare at the blank line. You wonder what to write. Maybe, "What's missing speaks louder than what's here." Or, "You can't archive grief." Or simply, "This isn't the whole story." You don't write anything. You walk out into the evening. The air feels lighter, colder. And you wonder, not for the first time, how many names we'll forget again tomorrow. How many stories will be swept into tidy captions. How many fires will be disguised as candlelight? Because this is how history survives. Not just in what we remember, but in what we allow ourselves to forget. And sometimes to remember properly, we need to go back. Not to the plaques, not to the portraits, but to the beginning of a story that's still being miswritten. She ruled with elegance. He'll write with fire. In the next chapter, power doesn't sit on a throne. It spills from a prison cell, scrawled across banned pages, whispered at night, and passed hand to hand like contraband hope. Chapter 13. Revolution. You do not arrive with a roar. You arrive in exile. Chapter 12 left us in the storm of defiance, the woman who carved her resistance not with a sword, but with her skin. Now the ink dries, the cell grows cold, and across the border, another kind of war is being written, not fought. You are not a queen, not a soldier, not a saint. You are a poet. And for once, in this strange, brutal world of thrones and torches and tired history books, that is enough. You're born to snow and silence, not wealth, not titles, just language. Words are your inheritance, metaphor, your weapon. And when the state takes everything else, words are what remain. You write in the cold, with frostbitten hands and lungs that never fully clear. Your pen scratches across paper like defiance across a sealed mouth. Each line you write is both love and protest. You write about bread and hunger. You write about windows and what happens behind them. You write about your country, the parts it hides and the parts it tries to kill. They notice. The first time they knock on your door, you're still young enough to believe they won't open it. They do. You're taken. Not brutally, not violently, just efficiently, as if they've done this before. They have. You're questioned about your poems, about your friends, about how many truths you think a country can survive before it crumbles. You say little, because you've already said too much, on paper. They confiscate your notebooks. You don't ask for them back. You know what happens to stories once the wrong hands hold them. You are released, but not free. Never free. The walls start to listen, so you begin to whisper. You leave, not with fanfare, not with goodbye, just with a coat, a passport, and one unfinished poem in your pocket. Exile is not glamour. It's cold apartments and borrowed names. It's letters never sent. But exile sharpens the pen. The further you go, the clearer the ink becomes. You write now not just for yourself, but for everyone who never could. For your mother, who still walks the market street. For your brother, who disappeared in the night. For the friend whose last name no one says anymore. You speak because silence no longer protects anyone. And slowly, line by line, stanza by stanza, you become the kind of danger the regime cannot kill. A voice that refuses to die. In cafes, they whisper your lines. In prisons, they pass your words on scraps of cloth. In embassies, your name is redacted, but still read. You are taught in secret. You are banned in public. Their lives. The room holds its breath. Not out of awe, but out of recognition. Because every country has its own unspoken things. Your voice, though born in the language of exile, makes them remember their own buried lines. And in that moment, across distance, across borders, you are home. Later, you are asked, how did you keep going? You think of the girl who wrote under a blanket with a matchstick, of the man who died with your poem sewn into his coat, of your mother who still leaves a light on, just in case. And you say, I never stopped loving what I left behind. History will not remember you as a queen. There is no crown. But there are words, and sometimes that is the sharper thing, the more permanent thing, because thrones rust, but verses echo. Long after the war, long after the statue falls, long after the flag changes, the poet remains. And as your final collection goes to print, banned in one country, beloved in another, you realize you didn't just write history, you outlived it. Your name may never hang in a palace, but it lives in every mouth that dared to speak truth. and that is enough. Now we turn the page once more, and in the next chapter we don't just write history, we build it. Brick by brick, protest by protest, hope by dangerous, fragile hope. Chapter 14. The Builders. You don't start with a hammer, you start with hunger. Not metaphorical hunger, real. The kind that hollows your ribs and makes your hands tremble when you hold the brick, the pen, the child. Because what comes after revolution isn't peace. It's rubble. It's noise. It's what the victors don't put on the flag. The part where the world you screamed into existence forgets to build anything real. But someone has to build it. That someone is you. You are not famous. You are not followed. You are not retweeted or interviewed or quoted in textbooks. You are just awake and exhausted. The rallies are over, the slogans fading, the tear gas has settled into the pavement. But now the question arrives, what next? You show up with scraped knees and a to-do list no one reads but you. You stay after the speeches. You sweep the floor. You organize the names. You put out the chairs. No one thanks you. That's fine. You didn't show up for applause. You build because you remember what it felt like before. The silence, the cold, the unnameable ache that filled your chest when the system whispered, "This is just how it is." And you remember the first time you realized it didn't have to be. You build schools in neighborhoods where the textbooks are older than the students. You build clinics where the government builds walls. You build food banks, coat drives, protest fundraisers, housing co-ops. You build with emails and spreadsheets and signs painted at midnight. You build by texting reminders, by showing up, by holding space, by handing out water when everyone else ran out. Sometimes you feel small, because you are, but small doesn't mean useless. Ants build mountains, hands build bridges, and movements, real ones, are built by those who keep showing up when the cameras leave. You are tired. You are broke. Your group chat is 1,000 messages deep with logistics and disagreements and last-minute supply runs. Someone brings donuts. It's enough. You work a shift, then go volunteer. You spend your day caring for someone else's kid, then stay up late writing grant applications. You know how to speak bureaucracy, how to navigate red tape, how to fake a smile when asking a city council for the 5th time why the new playground hasn't been built. You cry in the car, then you show up to the next meeting, because someone has to, and you've decided it's you. You know your neighborhood better than any drone shot ever could. You know who needs a ride to the polling place, who's afraid to report their landlord, who hasn't seen a doctor in 3 years. You know which aunties to call when you need 50 casseroles by morning. You don't wear a cape. You wear sneakers with holes and a jacket with too many pockets. You carry pens, extra chargers, It looks like compromise, like awkward conversations, like crying in the supply closet and then returning to the front desk with a smile. It looks like conflict resolution. It looks like community. It looks like deciding to stay when every part of you wants to run. It looks like listening, really listening, because sometimes what people need isn't policy, it's kindness. It's help moving a couch. It's a ride to court. It's someone who remembers their name. You are not perfect. You mess up. You say the wrong thing. You forget. You burn out. You start again. You learn to delegate. You learn that sometimes you are the problem. You learn to apologize. You learn to keep going. And slowly things shift. A playground gets built. A bill gets passed. A neighbor gets free from their abuser. A library reopens. You see the small victories. You celebrate them. Because you've learned they are not small at all. You are not trying to be a hero. You are trying to be useful. And sometimes in the quiet moments, when the sky is soft and no one is asking anything of you, you realize this is what hope feels like. Not grand, not glorious, but steady, like a heartbeat, like breath. You don't always know if what you're doing is enough, but you do it anyway. Because if history taught you anything, it's that nothing builds itself. Not freedom, not justice, not a community where everyone eats and no one is forgotten. Someone has to build it, so you do. With tired hands and borrowed time, and the stubborn belief that maybe, just maybe, the world can be better. And that's how it happens. Not in headlines, but in phone trees, in potlucks, in sidewalks cleared of snow, in names remembered, in harm repaired. That's where history lives now. Not just in museums, but in meetings held in church basements, in flyers stuck to lampposts, in dreams passed down through soup kitchens and whispered at the back of classrooms. You build, not because you're sure, but because you care. And when you're gone, they won't build statues, but they'll still eat from the gardens you planted. They'll sit on the benches you fixed. They'll walk into shelters you kept open. And maybe one day, when they ask how the world changed, someone will say your name, not as a hero, but as a builder. And in that moment you'll know you left something better behind. And as the mortar dries and the lights flicker back on in buildings once abandoned, we look not to monuments, but to the quiet strength of those still hammering away, unseen, unthanked, and absolutely essential. The echo that remains. You've walked through plague-ridden streets, worn the crown of a girl queen, felt fire kiss your feet and paint stitch your pain. You've watched thrones rise and bodies fall. You've heard the silence between cannon blasts and the softer kind. The silence of being misunderstood, while history keeps writing in ink that never quite dries. Each of them lived loudly, then died quietly. Or maybe the other way round. But always they left something, a painting, a myth, a law, a rumor, a page in a book that no one finishes, because the story keeps changing. And now, it's quiet again. You lie there, in your own body, in your own century, in your own ache. No crown, no guillotine, just the echo of others. You wonder, if someone told your story, what would they remember? Would they believe it? Would they soften it? Would they get it wrong? Or maybe, just maybe, the truth was never meant to be remembered, only felt, like a hand brushing past yours in the dark, like a match striking, long after the fire's gone out. If this story stayed with you, if a face, a sentence, or a silence found a corner in your mind tonight, you can stay. There are more stories, more forgotten names, more ghosts with something to say. So if you want, come back tomorrow. Same voice, same stillness, different century. And if you want this voice to find you again, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment below. Tell me who you'd like to meet next. Another queen, another war, another secret history waiting in the dark. Until then, rest. You've walked through enough history for one night. Good night. From the